I have been playing VR games for over 4 years now, and during that period I have played many different games of many different types. But there was one that stuck out from the rest, one that I would even consider to be the best VR game ever made, and I'm obviously talking about Boneworks. Boneworks was revolutionary when it came out. We hadn't seen a physics engine like this used in VR yet, and the way it complemented the gameplay was amazing for the time. Shooting was realistic, melee combat made you feel awesome, and the level design was not only creative, but also incentivized the player to think outside the box. I played it countless times, each time having a completely different experience from the last.
Look at this. Penetration. Oh god, it's sucking me in. Oh god, it's raping me! Oh god!
So when a sequel to Boneworks was announced, I was immediately hyped. A sequel to one of the best VR titles ever. I thought about all the improvements they would add to the game and the new features that would be implemented. So when the game came out and I finally got to try it, I was massively disappointed. For starters, I must say that disappointment is subjective. Just because a game is disappointing does not mean it's a bad game. I thought that Last of Us Part 2 was disappointing. I thought that Resident Evil 3 Remake was disappointing. I thought that Cyberpunk 2077 was disappointing, but they are still, in my opinion, really good games. The disappointment that I talk about comes from issues that a game has that I think could have been handled differently. Whether it be the story of the game and how it's told, the length of a game or how much content it offers, or even its broken gameplay. So by no means with this video am I saying that Bonelab is a bad game. Bonelab is severely flawed in many aspects, but it is still worth a playthrough. Like I've said before, Bonelab is not a bad game, and that is evident from the beginning. The opening sequence is amazing, and it feels just like how a sequel to one of the best VR games should feel. The environment was mysterious, and it kept us asking questions. Where were we, and why were we here? The game demonstrates to you its physics and how important it is not only for puzzle solving and traversal, but also for its combat. I remember reaching the last part of the first level and seeing the Omni projectors in the distance. I noticed a gun nearby and started slowly breaking the ammo crates as to not be noticed. Then suddenly, two nobodies that sneaked up on me. I tried killing them as stealthy as I could so I didn't alert anyone. When I got all my ammo, it was go time. Shooting around the place felt satisfying. Sneaking around and hitting them where they least expected was an experience like no other. I reached the final bridge and threw the enemy off it, looked around to think of what I just went through, and I remember thinking, my god, it is good to be back. But unfortunately, that was the first and only time I felt this way during my playthrough. Bonelab at its core simply feels like an expansion to Boneworks instead of feeling like a sequel. I'm not just talking about the length of the game and how short it is, but more about its design and how the game presents itself to the player. Right after the first level, we enter the game's main hub. This is where the player can try a variety of minigames like tech trial or parkour. We'll come back to these later. So when entering the main hub, players immediately try to figure out how to continue the story, but can't figure out how. Every obvious entrance is locked, and the only option seems to be entering the minigames. So I thought that maybe I had to go through all of these minigames and find something in them to help me progress. I kept playing them over and over and over again, hoping to find some indicator of progression. Turns out all you have to do is simply enter the minigame door and immediately leave. What the fuck? There are several things wrong with this way of design, starting with the fact that the game forces the player to stop progression of the main story to go do side content. What the fuck is the point of this, other than wasting the player's time? By halting the player's progression so abruptly, you are ruining the experience and reminding us that, hey, you're not in charge here, forcing us to sit through long fucking loading screens every time we enter a level, and then playing the slowest crane game of our lives to progress the story is awful level design and should have just been skipped entirely. Pro tip for game developers: if the player wants to do side content, they will do so when they feel like it. Don't force them. And the same issue happens throughout the entire game, where you go from these extremely enjoyable levels to very slow paced ones, with nothing to do but to go to the next objective. Seriously, what the fuck is the point of that moon level? Yes, it's fun to play around with the gravity for like 2 minutes, but then there's nothing to do. The map is huge with multiple things that you can't interact with. So what am I supposed to do other than go to the objective? Making a map this big is simply a time waster. The part that bothered me the most was the last half of the game, where you are tasked with filling a body log which lets you change your avatar at will. You can be strong, heavy, tall, short, light, or fast. Yeah, I did that for a while. Each of these avatars have a certain level designed for them, where they serve as tutorials for you to understand their purpose. Tall helps you reach high places, fast allows you to, well, go fast. And heavy is a complete fucking powerhouse. After unlocking all of the avatars, you earn the ability to change between them at will, and you can use this for puzzles, combat, or traversal, and it is super fun. You go through a long level where your creativity is your limit. You can tackle different challenges in any way you'd like with these characters, and it really makes your experience feel unique. And then the game ends. When you finally feel the game was getting started, you realize you are playing the last level, and just like that, it's over. The thing that pisses me off about this is that when you think about it, putting it into perspective, this game has 14 levels, where 7 of them are tutorials. Now that's disappointing. Usually when a sequel of a game comes out, it is expected to see some sort of innovation, and we got that in Bonelab with the avatar changing system, which adds more variety and creativity to the problem solving. But that's really the only improvement I can think of, because honestly, everything else seems worse. This being a physics-based game, you're obviously bound to encounter some janky gameplay, but just because it's janky doesn't mean it's fun. I've had numerous instances where I was constantly fighting the physics in the game. Climbing feels more like a chore than anything else. Continuously getting my hands and feet stuck, begging for life that I wouldn't be shot down to the bottom so I would have to climb again. The worst part is when the physics break to the point of soft locking the game. I've had this happen with the crane at the beginning of the game, where it was simply stuck on itself and it wouldn't move. Unfortunately, I don't have footage of this because my footage got corrupted, but there's posts around the internet that I can show you around the screen, so that proves my point. It happened, I swear, I'm not lying. Please believe me, I fucking need this. Even the vehicles have physics problems. I was super excited to go on an epic roller coaster and then this happened. You know how fucking nauseating that was? Speaking of nausea, fun fact, I have never felt motion sickness playing VR. Ever. Until this game came out. Specifically, the kart racing level. After it was over, I physically stood up and tried not to throw up. And then I got distracted by my tits, which immediately cured my motion sickness. Combat also seemed to have changed a little bit, but kind of to the worse. Some melee weapons don't seem to hit as hard as they should, or guns missing shots even if they are completely point blank. Overall, I do like the gameplay, don't get me wrong, but it has so many flaws that are way too obvious to go unnoticed, and it doesn't seem worthy of a sequel to have these. Boneworks was innovative when it came out. Not a lot of developers were pushing the boundaries of VR like Stress Level 0 was. But when Bonelab came out, I didn't feel this improvement in innovation were there. Bonelab comes out with a variety of content. You get shooting, melee combat, parkour, and more. The problem is, when a game tries doing everything, it ends up doing nothing. The game tries to be a jack of all trades, but becomes a master of none. Adding different game modes is a good way to diversify your content, but it feels like there's barely any depth to it. I can think of other VR games that do what Bonelab tries to achieve much better. You want to shoot guns and feel like John Wick? Play Hard Bullet instead. The game offers a plethora of an arsenal, and the gameplay feels way better. You want to try your hand at melee combat? Play Blade and Sorcery instead. The combat and weapon handling are way more satisfying. You want to try parkour? Play Stride instead. The game offers a sense of movement like no other. Running on walls, using grappling hooks, and jumping buildings has never felt so awesome. So many other games have excelled at every part of Bonelab that it makes it feel ineffective. Like it's not thriving and improving like the prequel once did.
Woohoo! Alright, good job. Hop on in. We gotta be some.
Bonelab is a sandbox game at its core. It's supposed to promote player creativity and let you go wild, doing whatever you want, and the best part is that it offers tons of mod support. You can download new levels to play or new avatars to try out, and the game will calculate your avatar's stats based on their body measurements. There's so many possibilities, and we finally have all of this in one VR game. I'd go as far as to say that this could become the future Garry's Mod of VR. But the biggest problem I have with Bonelab is the lack of worthwhile content at launch. I know the future of modding will eventually change this, but modding doesn't make a game. You shouldn't depend on your fan base to make the game better. That is your job as developers. I'm really glad you can buy the OST for this game because right now, it's really the only thing worth your money. Buying Bonelab at full price is a bad investment right now, and you should just go play Boneworks instead. In the future, when modding becomes better established, Bonelab will finally become the game that Stress Level 0 envisioned from the start, and that's when I think you should buy it. Because in the end, Bonelab is a good VR game, and I know that if it keeps growing, it can become the best VR game of all time. Thank you so much for watching the video until the end, I appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video and comment down below what do you think of Bonelab. Give me your own review, I'd like to know. And if you want to see more videos, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.